My name is Ursula Forster.
And I'm Oskar Lehner.
We have been traveling the world together in our off-road vehicle since 2016. In June 2023, we spent 3 weeks in the Pamirs in Tajikistan, which we crossed by car and on foot in different directions.
The Pamir Mountains are a high plateau, about 3 times the size of Switzerland, with mountains over 7,000 meters high. The Pamir is also known as the roof of the world, as 3 mountain ranges meet here, the Karakoram, the Tian Shan and the Hindu Kush. Tajikistan, China and Kyrgyzstan have a share in the Pamir. The first European to report on the Pamir was Marco Polo. He crossed the Pamir in the 13th century and described that there were no settlements there and that the fire would burn less hot at the high altitude. The legendary Pamir Highway is more than 1,000 kilometers long and the second highest international highway in the world. The highest point is the Langar Pass at 4,655 meters. The Pamir Highway was built by the people of the Soviet Union in the 1930s for strategic reasons to secure state border.
The green line on the map shows our off-road vehicle journey through the Pamirs and, marked in yellow, the route we marched on foot.
From Dushanbe, a well-maintained road leads in the direction of Kalakum. After passing the Khorog Pass, the road winds down to the Panj River, which is the border river to Afghanistan for many hundreds of kilometers.
One way or the other, either Pamir, Tajikistan or Afghanistan. We choose Pamir, Tajikistan. It's the safer.
The Pamir Highway is currently being extensively improved with Chinese assistance. From Kalakum, a 100-kilometer-long construction site begins, which can only be driven during the night when no work is being done. It takes about 6 hours to cover the approximated 100 kilometers. Even after the end of the 100-kilometer-long roadworks, the condition of the road is still a challenge. However, if you drive carefully, the entire Pamir Highway is in such a condition that it can be driven on with a normal car. The Panj River is 921 kilometers long and carries up to 1,000 cubic meters of water per second. Along its entire length, it forms the border between Tajikistan and Afghanistan. On the other side of the river, in Afghanistan, there is also a similar road.
It is both moving and sad to observe through binoculars the people who had the misfortune to be born on the other side of the river and now have to live under Taliban rule. Sometimes they waved back.
You can only guess at the hardships involved in farming here. Tajikistan does not recognize the Taliban regime. Barracks, military patrols, defense positions and mines are signs of the political tensions between the two countries. Tajikistan is currently building a power line through the Panj Valley with the aim of exporting electricity to Afghanistan in the future. Khorog is the capital of the province of Gorni Badakhshan. The city lies at an altitude of 2,200 meters and has a population of 30,000. Khorog has a botanical garden worth visiting and a small museum where specimens of the local fauna are exhibited.
We left the Pamir Highway in Khorog and instead traveled further south along the Tajik-Afghan border to Ishkashim and into the Wakhan Corridor. Our first stop was the village of Kukilal, once an important ruby mine. Children insisted that we meet the English teacher in the village. She hardly spoke in English, but she owned a candy shop.
There are numerous thermal springs with therapeutical effects along the valley. Gam Chasma and the Bibi Fatima Zahra Spring, in the Wakhan Corridor, are the best known. Men and women bathe at different times. Swimming costumes are forbidden. Near the village of Ishkashim, the Panj Valley bends towards the east and offers a marvelous view of the Hindu Kush. However, the border crossing from Afghanistan is permanently closed. The Wakhan Corridor belongs to Afghanistan and forms a territorial corridor to China. The demarcation is based on negotiations in 1895 between the Russian and the British Empire to separate their zones of influence. In order to prevent the British colony of India from bordering Russia, it was agreed that the Wakhan Corridor should belong to Afghanistan. The Wakhan Corridor is an east-west oriented valley. The northern bank of the river is Tajik territory. The valley floor and the mountain slopes to the south belong to Afghanistan. Pakistani territory extends beyond the Hindu Kush mountain ridge visible in the south. Side valleys offer occasional views at the imposing Hindu Kush mountain range, whose peaks here are over 7,500 meters high. Agriculture is only possible with artificial irrigation. Women cover their faces here not for religious reasons but because sun-tanned skin is considered inappropriate. Several castle ruins, some of which are more than 2,000 years old, are silent witnesses to the fact that the Wakhan Valley centuries ago was an important section of the Silk Road trade route. The predominant religion in the region is Islam. However, there are many indications of a complex religious history, with a wide variety of religions overlapping. Clear traces of animist religions can be found in cemeteries. The traditional Pamir houses are still built today according to the number symbolism of Zoroastrianism. The remains of Buddhist temples and cave monasteries can be found along the road. The majority of the population in the Pamirs are Ismailis and recognize the Aga Khan as their spiritual leader and imam. Ismailis are Shiites. However, they practice an open-minded and liberal form of Islam in which the position of women is much stronger than in the rest of Islam. Karim Aga Khan IV is one of the richest men in the world. He uses a considerable part of his fortune for development projects. You can find a picture of him in almost every house in the Pamirs.
The ascent to the Pamir Plateau and the 4,300 meter high Khorog Pass begins at the village of Langar. After a few kilometers we came to a place where a bridge had been washed away. The alternative route led through the river. When we arrived, a small drama was unfolding. The drivers of two vehicles didn't dare to drive through the water. After a brief inspection, and with the certainty that our car was pretty robust, we simply drove through without much hesitation. Further up the pass, we met two motorcyclists from the Czech Republic who were obviously much faster than us on their off-road bikes.
Und die haben sich das Auto, die haben sich die Motorbikes am Tisch gestellt, noch mit einem Berg. Das hat einer gekostet 1.200.
The river to the right of the road is the Pamir River, which forms the border with Afghanistan and can easily be forded on foot.
That's how it feels when you travel over a washboard road. The next day we finally reached the Pamir Highway again and drove to the village of Bulungkul, where we parked our car for a few days.
After so many days in the car, we finally wanted to go hiking. Our plan was a 7-day hike with tents and pack animals from the Lake Yashikul over the Langar Pass to Lake Sarez and then on to Barchidev. A local travel agency had organized 3 guides and 2 donkeys for us to hike through this remote part of the Pamirs. After a few hours, we met a group of shepherds who told us that we were the first hiking group this year and that only very seldom trekking groups pass by. The second day was by far the most strenuous. We set off at dawn and reached the 4,650 meter high Langar Pass shortly before midday. The descent on the north side was particularly strenuous, where we had to wade for long stretches through the already soaked snow. I also felt the first signs of altitude sickness, which disappeared again as soon as we descended. It was a great experience to camp in this lonely and deserted mountain dwell. Our guide Yusuf found the horns of an ibex that had died in winter under a rock. That campsite was by far the most beautiful, and our guides managed to catch a few trout with an improvised net. On the 4th day, we hiked through a long valley. The numerous river crossings through the ice-cold water and the traversing of the many landslides were challenging. We repeatedly heard wolves howling. However, apart from tracks in the mud and the wolf droppings, we never in fact saw a wolf. On the 5th day, we finally found the first signs of human civilization again. Behind an abandoned Soviet area farm is a meteorological station that reports the weather to the capital Dushanbe every 6 hours. On the 6th day, we took a motorboat across Sarez Lake to a hydrological station.
Sarez Lake was created in 1911 after a 7.0 earthquake. A huge landslide, which buried an entire village, created a 500-meter high dam of rock, mud and glacial ice. Over the next 3 years, the 60-kilometer-long Lake Sarez dammed up behind these barriers. If this dam were to burst after another earthquake, the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in the downstream areas would be endangered by a huge flood wave.
On the 7th day we finally reached our destination, the small village of Barchidev. From there we travelled for 2 days by taxi through the Bartang Valley and along the Pamir Highway, back to our car at Lake Yashikul and then to Murghab.
The district town of Murghab lies at 3,600 meters above sea level and has a population of 7,000.
In Murghab we had to fix some technical problems with the car. We had filled up with polluted diesel at a petrol station in Ishkashim and therefore first had to empty the tank of the car and then replace the diesel filter. We also had to repair a flat tire.
North of Murghab, the gravel road leads up to the highest point of the Pamir Highway, the Langar Pass at 4,655 meters. The village of Karakul, inhabited by ethnic Kyrgyz, and the lake of the same name lie at 4,000 meters above sea level. The lake shore is covered in white salt from the surf.
It was a gorgeous campsite and certainly one of the most beautiful places to wash dishes. We still had one last adventure ahead of us. We wanted to take the direct route from Karakul to the Bartang Valley.
The route from Lake Karakul to the Bartang Valley is not an official road, but rather a track that is maintained by the local population. The track leads through a breathtakingly beautiful landscape. There are no villages for more than 100 kilometers. Two sections are particularly difficult, the Khorog Pass and a place where the road runs in the river. Animal carcasses along the way are a reminder of the meager living conditions that prevail in this remote area. Several millennia ago, during a warm period, there was a permanent human settlement on this site. An old lunar calendar pointing due north and an old millstone are the last remnants of a vanished village. Today, only one family with their cattle lives in this area during the summer.
When driving the Khorog Pass, the challenge was to drive the many tight bends slowly enough to avoid oversteering and falling into the gorge. The key section, however, is a stretch where the road runs for several hundred meters in the river. Locals had advised us not to drive the route after mid-July and only in the early morning when the water level is low. Because of the glacier melt, the river is otherwise so high that the road can be washed out and the tipped-over car can be swept away by the current.
Unfortunately, a tragic accident happened at this spot a few weeks later. At a time when the river was carrying considerably more water, the car of an overlander got stuck in a washed-out section of the river. Fortunately, the two passengers were able to rescue themselves in time. A mobilized bulldozer could only be deployed the next morning. Unfortunately, the water had risen so much during the night that the car had been washed away in the meantime. From the village of Kudara, there is once again an official road that leads 100 kilometers through the magnificent landscape of the Bartang Valley and joins the Pamir Highway at the village of Roshan.
After some 4 weeks crisscrossing the Pamirs, we eventually headed back to the capital Dushanbe. If you are looking for the extraordinary, we can recommend you the Pamirs. Anyone looking for adventure will find plenty of it there.
Ne müddet Tajikistan